For centuries, the Roman Empire wasn't just some superpower. It was literally the operating system for the entire Western world. Its laws, its legions, its incredible engineering. That was the code that ran civilization. So, what happens when that OS, an OS that's been running for 1,000 years, just crashes? Well, let's find out.
And I'm not being metaphorical here. This wasn't just, a new guy in charge. When Rome finally fell, the absolute basic stuff that holds a society together, it just crumbled. The laws that gave you order, the legions that kept you safe, the roads that connected everyone and everything, poof, it all just stopped.
So that's really the big question we're tackling today, isn't it? What happens when the lights go out? When all that stability from the ancient world just vanishes? What on earth is going to fill that void? The answer, well, it's this massive, profound transformation of society. And it all kicks off with the very symbols of power.
And wow, this slide just nails that shift, doesn't it? Look on the left, you've got the old world, the sword, the senator, the legionary. That's Roman power. But on the right, totally different. You've got the cross, the bishop, the knight. The fundamental idea of what power is was being completely rewritten from the ground up.
All right, so how does something this huge, this powerful, even fail? You might think it was some epic battle, a massive army storming the gates. But nope. The truth is, Rome wasn't really conquered. It was hollowed out from the inside, like a long, slow-acting poison had been at work for centuries. So let's break down that internal rot. There were really three big things going on. First, the empire was just massive, way too big to manage. I mean, a message from Syria to Rome could take weeks to get there. How do you govern like that? Second, the economy was a complete disaster. We're talking constant wars, insane inflation, crippling taxes. The whole system was just breaking down. And finally, the empire split in two. The rich eastern half basically said, "Good luck, you're on your own," to the poor west, leaving it totally exposed. And the actual end, it was so anticlimactic, almost bizarrely quiet. In 476 AD, this Germanic commander, Odoacer, he walks in and deposes the last Roman emperor, who was just a kid, by the way, and he doesn't even kill him. He just packs up the crown and all the imperial gear, puts it in a box, and mails it over to Constantinople with this simple message. That's it. The end of the Western Roman Empire wasn't some huge explosion. It was the quiet sound of a box being packed. Okay, so what was life actually like the day after that system crashed? I mean, it was terrifying. The incredible aqueducts that brought fresh water to cities, they ran dry. The amazing Roman roads, now they were just bandit territory, so trade completely stopped. Reading and writing, forget about it, unless you were in a monastery. And in all this chaos, people had to make a really terrible choice: trade their freedom for just a little bit of safety from the local warlord. So you've got this enormous power vacuum, right? No army, no law, no one in charge. Nature abhors a vacuum, and history does too. And into this void steps a ghost, an unexpected force that's going to rise up and define the next 1,000 years of history. And this quote from the philosopher Thomas Hobbes just hits the nail on the head. He said, "The papacy is the ghost of the deceased Roman Empire sitting crowned upon the grave thereof." Wow, I mean, think about that. The church didn't have to build its power from scratch. It just moved into the empty office buildings, the administrative ruins of the old empire. A ghost wearing a crown, sitting on a grave. And this wasn't just some poetic idea. It was a literal blueprint. Look at this chart. The church basically copy-pasted Rome's org chart. Roman provinces, they became church dioceses. Latin, the language of the empire, now it's the only language for diplomacy, for scripture, for anyone important. The Pope even took the emperor's old title, Pontifex Maximus. It's incredible. They just slipped right into Rome's old clothes. So how did the church get so powerful? Well, it had two main tools. On one hand, it offered the hope of heaven, which in a really brutal world was a huge deal. But on the other hand, it had this, excommunication. And you've got to understand, this was the ultimate weapon. It wasn't just, you can't come to church anymore. If a king got excommunicated, he was basically canceled. Nobody had to obey him anymore. Popes became the kingmakers and king-breakers of Europe. So while all this high-level political drama is going on with popes and kings, civilization itself was being saved in these quiet, isolated monasteries. You can think of them as Noah's arks for knowledge. Inside, you had monks who spent their entire lives painstakingly copying everything, not just the Bible, but Greek philosophy, Roman medical texts, books on farming. Their motto was ora et labora, pray and work. They were basically the last libraries, hospitals, and science labs in a world that had forgotten how to build them.
Okay, so the church has spiritual authority, it has knowledge, it's getting rich, but that's not enough, right? Being rich and influential just makes you a target. The church had a powerful voice, but it had no army. It needed a sword. It needed a protector. And they found that sword in the most powerful warrior king in Europe, a guy named Charlemagne. And on Christmas Day in the year 800, something absolutely history-changing happens. The Pope takes a crown, places it on this Frankish king's head, and names him the new emperor of the Romans. Think about that. In one move, you've merged barbarian military power with the ancient sacred legacy of Rome. And who is in the middle making it all happen? The church.
Now, Charlemagne wasn't just some brute. He was actually obsessed with education and bringing order to things. And to really get one of his biggest achievements, just try to read this. Seriously, it's a total nightmare, isn't it? Everything is mashed together, no spaces, no lowercase letters. Now, imagine if everything you had to read was like that. Every book, every official document. How could you possibly spread knowledge? Communication would be next to impossible. And that was the exact problem Charlemagne's people were facing. So what did they do? Well, Charlemagne's scholars fixed it. They came up with this simple but totally revolutionary solution. They standardized things. They created lowercase letters, used uppercase letters to start sentences, and, this is the big one, they put spaces between words. It seems so basic to us now, but this one change, called Carolingian minuscule, was a literacy revolution. It made knowledge so much easier to read, to copy, and to share. But let's go back to that coronation for a second, because it wasn't just a nice ceremony. It was a genius power play by the Pope. By being the one to physically place the crown on Charlemagne's head, he was sending a message, loud and clear. I'm the one who makes emperors. The ultimate power comes from me, from the church. And the story goes that Charlemagne was furious afterwards, because he got it immediately. The Pope had just set himself up as the boss, kicking off a power struggle between popes and kings that would last for the next 1,000 years. So Charlemagne builds its incredible empire, but after he dies, it falls apart almost immediately. Europe is right back to being fragmented, weak, and vulnerable. And then a new terror comes screaming out of the north, the Vikings. Their raids were so fast, so brutal, that society had to completely reorganize itself around one single idea: survival. And that new system, we call it feudalism. And this is what that society looked like: a rigid pyramid. Way up at the top, you've got a king, but he's often just a king in name only. The real power was with the nobles below him, the lords who actually owned all the land. The nobles had knights, their professional soldiers, to protect them. And holding up this entire thing? The serfs, the massive majority of people who did all the work. The whole system was based on a kind of contract, a really harsh deal. A serf would give up all his freedom, his labor, his loyalty. And what did he get in return? Protection. A place to live and work without getting killed by Vikings. The knight? He provides the muscle, the military service, and in return he gets land and gets to control the serfs on it. You have to get this. Feudalism wasn't a system built on ideas of justice or fairness. It was basically a giant protection racket born out of pure, constant fear. Okay, so we've seen how this new world, feudal Europe, was forged in the West. But that's only part of the story. To really see the whole picture, we need to zoom out. Because it turns out, Western Europe wasn't the only heir to Rome. 2 other massive civilizations were also rising from the ashes. And here's the big plot twist. Part of the Roman Empire never fell at all. Yeah, that's right. While the whole West was collapsing into chaos, the Eastern Roman Empire, which we call Byzantium today, just kept on going. And not just surviving, thriving. For another 1,000 years, they preserved Roman law, Greek philosophy, all the stuff the West had lost. And at the exact same time, down in the Arabian desert, a brand new power was exploding onto the world stage. The rise of Islam created a third great heir to the ancient world, a civilization so dynamic it would change the map of the world forever. So this is the new board game, the new map of the world. You have 3 main players, 3 heirs of Rome. In the West, you've got feudal Europe. It's Catholic, it's fragmented, it's kind of looking inward. In the East, you have the Byzantine Empire, Orthodox Christian, centralized, and carrying the torch of Roman glory.
And then sweeping across the south and the east, you have the Islamic Caliphate, super advanced in science, always expanding, and the new keepers of all that ancient Greek knowledge.
And really, the next 1,000 years of history is all about how these three different worlds are going to interact with each other. Which brings us to our final big question. When these three worlds collide, what's going to happen? Are they going to clash in war? Are they going to trade goods and ideas? Are they going to learn from each other? The answer, of course, is all of the above. And that right there is the story of the Middle Ages.